It is now the end of 2023, which means that it's time to take a look at all the different media that I've consumed over the past year and determine which projects were my favorite and least favorite of the year. Today, I will be focusing on the new video games that I've played. Now, for those that have watched my last couple videos in which I covered the shows and movies from 2023, you might be asking yourself, wasn't this video supposed to be out already? To you guys, I say, yes it was. Unfortunately, when it came time for me to work on this video, I started to realize that I really don't have as much to say when it comes to video games as I do about movies and shows. Most of what I could say about why I placed a title in a specific category will really come down to the same statements over and over again. So I decided that I had to find a different way to make this video so that it might at least be somewhat interesting. Therefore, I am combining the overall list with the top 5 video, which was originally going to be a separate project. This way, I can briefly group titles together and get across how I felt about them while also not wasting too much time. Unlike the previous videos, these games will not be ranked from worst to best, but instead, they will be placed in ranked groups to establish my overall feelings towards them. Now, with my busy schedule this year, I was unable to play every game that came out, so there are going to be notable titles missing from the discussion today. There is also one title I will not be mentioning at all, because at this point, the franchise it is a part of has been tainted by the creator, and I really have no interest in contributing to the discussion on that turf. Having said that, I also want to make it clear that the things I say about these games are my own opinions and are based on my own personal experience with the games in question. It is not a list of which games I believe are objectively the best. It is a list of which games are my personal favorites from the year. Ready? Let's get started. While I try to keep an open mind and give all games a fair shot to win me over, it is important for me, and really all gamers, to understand that some games are simply not meant for me. My Hero Ultra Rumble, Honkai Star Rail, and Exoprimal were all examples of this for me. The gameplay was fine, and I can see why some people might be interested in the gameplay loops that exist, but there just wasn't enough there to hook me past the first missions. You might think that this would make these games my least favorite of the year, but truth be told, I wasn't really expecting all that much from these games. Going in with a clean slate of expectations made me feel much less upset when the games gave me nothing to enjoy, which is very different from the games that left me feeling disappointed by the lack of a hook. There were quite a few games that left me underwhelmed to the point where I barely played past the tutorial, despite opening up a full day's gaming session to fit the time to fully dive into each one. Diablo 4 had broken mandatory online at launch, which really turned me off completely. Final Fantasy XVI was far too linear after I finally got to play once the 40 minutes of cutscenes ended, and Wild Hearts just failed to scratch that Monster Hunter itch that I've been looking for. And if you think that cheaper games would be immune from this disappointment, then Pocket Witch, Rise of Fox Hero, Fur Squadron, Meg's Monster, and Oni Road to be the Mightiest Oni can all tell you that the price tag does not prevent a game from being full of nothing. It's also important for me to acknowledge that my general attitude can contribute to my feelings on a game that I play, and unfortunately both Minecraft Legends and Teslagrad 2 hit me at a time when I was honestly not in a great headspace, which led to me giving up shortly after sitting down to play them. So at least for the time being, I am obligated to label them as underwhelming. There were many games this year that I enjoyed while I was playing them, but if we're being honest, I don't see any reason to return to them in the future. Many of them have better alternative titles that they live in the shadow of. Cassette Beasts is an attempt to take on the Pokemon formula. Homestead Arcana is a third-person Stardew Valley. Space Gladiators takes on Dead Cells. Marble Up Ultra plays very similarly to any of the multiple Monkey Ball games. Disney's Illusion Island puts itself up against any of the many fantastic 2D platformers. And heck, even Fire Emblem Engage pales in comparison to its own predecessor on the same console, Fire Emblem Three Houses. There were also cute little games that made me smile, but just don't have enough to give me a reason to return. The charm of Chicory: A Colorful Tale, Koa and the Five Pirates of Mara, and Blanc mainly come down to a pleasing visual art style and chill vibes. Street Fighter 6 is something that I'm sure fans of the franchise will return to for years to come, but for me, once I got my fill of the campaign, it lacks a hook for me, mainly because I have no particular affinity for the roster in Street Fighter. There are also games that are a bit more reliant on the writing of dialogue and story. Shadows Over Loathing is incredibly funny, and One Piece Odyssey is extremely faithful to the world and characters of the manga. But for both of these, once you experienced the writing once, the pretty basic turn-based RPG combat does not offer enough depth to keep my interest. It has been an overall great year for games, and the category that has the most titles is the group of games that I had a grand old time with. There is a good bit of variety here as well. If you're looking for a budget roguelite similar to Enter the Gungeon, you have the highly addictive Brotato and Shotgun King: The Final Checkmate. If you want fun life sims similar to Stardew Valley, then you have Paleo Pines and Roots of Pacha. Maybe you want a calming puzzle game with some shop sim action, in which case Potion Craft Alchemist Simulator has you covered. Or perhaps you like high score based minigames, in which case, yeah, you want those games, right? Now Let's See You Clear Them is the game for you. Yes, that's actually the name of the game, and ever since I played it, I've been dreading this moment. Platforming fans have Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and if you like time management, then Pikmin 4 can scratch that itch for you. If you want a game like Super Smash Bros., then you have Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, and if kart racers are more your thing, then Disney Speedstorm is a very capable Mario Kart competitor. In this group, we see the revival of two older Nintendo franchises in the Battle Royale F-Zero 99 and the tactical RPG Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. RPG fans were really eating good this year, because we also got the turn-based Octopath Traveler 2, the open galaxy action RPG Starfield, and the sometimes swinging, sometimes doing chores, sometimes not even playing as the hero simulator Spider-Man 2. There was a great selection this year, and even though each of these miss out on my top 5 for different reasons, I would recommend all of these games to people in a heartbeat. With that, we have reached my top 5 favorite games of the year. And now, let's slow down a little bit so I can fully explain why I loved these games and why I have them placed where I do. As a side note, in case anyone was wondering how my top 10 would round out, numbers 6 through 10 unranked would be F-Zero 99, Pikmin 4, Potion Craft, Roots of Pacha, and Shotgun King. That's right, Spider-Man fans. Your game doesn't even make the top 10. It's sitting right next to Starfield where it belongs. Cry about it. At number 5 is Venba. Placing this game here plays against much of what I typically look for in terms of determining which games are my favorite. I would argue it's much more of an interactive story with only a handful of very short puzzle sequences to count as actual gameplay. There is a definitive ending and no branching storylines, so once you have seen it through the first time, that's it. However, this story is full of emotion, and unlike many other narrative games, it has stuck with me since I played it. Number 4 goes to Baldur's Gate 3. I am a huge fan of Dungeons & Dragons, but the main issue with D&D is that your enjoyment of the game is incredibly reliant on the group you play with and the rolls you get with your dice. If you get on a cold streak with low rolls, then it makes things very difficult in your progression. And if you don't have a consistent group that you enjoy playing with, it makes the entire process very boring. However, when everything comes together, it's hard to beat that pure joy that comes from a good session. The same can be said for Baldur's Gate 3. My time with the game has had some of the highest of gaming highs, but it has also had some of the lowest and most frustrating moments in gaming for me. The highs definitely outweigh the lows, which is why the game makes its way up to the top 5, but I cannot bring myself to put it any higher. Number 3 is going to be another shock for some of you, especially if you were around for the Ace Trainer Cody days. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a fantastic adventure. Surprisingly, I loved the character arc for Zelda in the main story, and for those that have listened to the Bydmoc podcast episode about this game, then you know I love the themes explored here as well. Fusing items to create new weapons makes every material feel useful, and every weapon, while powerful, also feels expendable. It's a great way to balance the weapon durability system. My main complaints about the game, the things that keep it from number 1, really boil down to comparisons to my experience with Breath of the Wild. There were many more moments in this sequel where I found myself getting bored by the side quests and even parts of the main quest. Meanwhile, in Breath of the Wild, I enjoyed running around aimlessly for the fetch quests. While I look at the two games, and I can acknowledge that Tears of the Kingdom is objectively the better game, I have to admit that Breath of the Wild gave me an overall more consistent personal experience. I have replayed and completed every shrine and quest in Breath of the Wild multiple times, but once I hit the credits in Tears of the Kingdom, I've never gone back, and I think that really says a lot. At number 2 is Suikoden. This is such a simple high score based game, and it is admittedly a bit embarrassing to see the amount of hours I have put into it. There is a good reason why the first gameplay video on this channel was for this game. There's not really much I can even say about the game that you can't see for yourself. All I have to add is that every once in a while there's a game like this that I can open up and play a few rounds in when I want to unwind, and I find that very comforting. It has been a great year for the young gamer in me. Growing up, we had two systems, a Sega Genesis and a Super Nintendo, which my sister and I would play over and over again. We relied very heavily on the hand-me-down games that were given to us with the systems. On the Sega Genesis, we would always throw in either Disney's Castle of Illusion or Sonic the Hedgehog. This year, we got Illusion Island, and even though I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, we also got Sonic Superstars. On the Super Nintendo, we had F-Zero, which is the game that F-Zero 99 replicates, and we had the very first game that I ever beat. The very first game that I ever considered to be my favorite game. And even though there have been other games to come along and take that top spot from it, this one game has always been in my top 10. I am talking, of course, about Super Mario World. This year, we saw a triumphant return of 2D Mario platforming with Super Mario Wonder. And all words are inadequate to describe the pure joy and excitement I felt from the reveal up through the time I actually got to play the released game. Every level left me with a huge smile on my face, and the art style on its own is full of life and charm. The boss fights are a bit underwhelming, but honestly, the rest of the levels more than make up for it. The special badges add different ways to play each level, and it adds replayability. Nintendo even found a way to make playing online smooth and worthwhile. While the reasoning might be incredibly personal, this game was always destined to be my favorite game of the year, and it was not even close. My younger self is beyond words, and that's a very special feeling to have towards any game. And there you have it. That is the full list of video games that I played in 2023, and my final ranking for my top 5 favorite games of the year. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe for more. Also, make sure to come back later this week when I rank my top 5 shows and my top 10 movies. Until then, thanks for watching.